Racism in education.
Racism is still extremely prevalent in Irish society. The INAO received 600 reports of racism in 2022. Black victims of racist attacks do not believe Gardaí will treat their experiences seriously, a new report has found. This could prevent issues from being reported, therefore it could prevent a solution to racism in Ireland. Racism in Indonesia is still present today. It exists in many forms, including stereotypes, hate speech, and discriminatory practices. Paupans, for example, face discrimination in the forms of limited education and employment opportunities. As you can see from the images on screen, we surveyed a large range of ethnicities, genders, and ages to get an accurate representation of racism within the education system. Question 1 was the general question of have you ever experienced racism from fellow students, teachers, or lecturers in an education setting? Out of 32 responses, 23 participants responded that they have not experienced racism, but 10 participants responded that they have experienced racism whilst in an educational setting. Question 2 was to specify what type of negative treatment the person has come across. The most common treatment participants have witnessed is gossiping, followed by exclusion, with only one participant reported to have not come across any negative treatment in relation to race.
As we can see for question number 3, it is, has racism in the educational system ever affected your growth or learning abilities? And out of our 33 responses, 69% of people said no. This could be down to the fact that they haven't experienced racism possibly, or how they were taught to deal with the racism in their education system helped them to prevent this affecting their growth or learning abilities. And for the 15% of people who said yes and the 15% of people who said maybe, it could just show that they weren't maybe taught how to handle racism in their educational systems, or it could be down to the emotional maturity or the age of these people. As we can see for question number 4, it is, how would you describe your concerns about the impact of racism in regard to expressing your ideas in a group setting? Majority of people, being 15 out of 22, said that it did affect them negatively and they may have felt intimidated to speak up in a group setting, whereas 7 people said it did not affect them at all. Some reasons for the people saying that it did affect them negatively to speak up in a group setting was due to feeling judged, feeling intimidated, not being heard, or not being even given the chance to speak.
Question 5. Are you aware of any incidents involving racism in your educational setting? If so, explain. Out of 28 responses, 9 said no and 19 said yes and gave some explanation along with their responses. Some explanations given were: lab tech or lecturer called over by students of a different ethnicity were ignored whilst the lab tech or lecturer proceeded to engage with the white counterparts. Playing sport in college, a team member from UNIB was called a racial slur by the opposing college. Other students noticed in classes or labs that their fellow students with a different ethnicity were discriminated against by both lecturers and students. Students on nursing co-op, also from a different ethnicity, get questioned by fellow peers, but also patients on their ethnic background, with some racial comments aimed towards them. Question number 6. In your opinion, do you think universities are actively trying to tackle racism? 36.4% said yes, 21.2% said no, and 42.4% said maybe. Figures on the graph show that most students voted maybe, suggesting they don't actually know, as it is not something we are often made aware of. Research shows the HEA, Higher Education Authority, brought in anti-racism principles which each college must abide by. In UL, we have an ethnic diversity forum which aims to educate and raise awareness about ethnic diversity to help everyone understand different perspectives and experiences, stop racial and ethnic harassment and discrimination, to have an inclusive campus, and to develop and implement anti-racism policies and strategies. The EDF here in UL consists of 3 groups: action planning, policy research and survey design, events and social media.
Question 7 was, throughout your time in education, have you ever been assigned to a specific task at school based on your race? If so, please explain. Out of all responses, 10 participants stated that they have never received a task based on their race, and 2 participants said that they have received a task based on their race. One of the examples was, in primary school, I was able to educate my class on my country, the language, and its culture. Question 8 was, does experiencing racial discrimination or witnessing others experience racial discrimination take a toll on your mental health? 66.7% people said it does, and 27.3% of people said that it doesn't. One participant added that it wouldn't affect their mental health, but it would frustrate them in the moment. Another said that it wouldn't take a toll on the mental health, but it is upsetting to see.
Question 9 of our survey was, if you have experienced racial discrimination in an education setting, have you ever reported it, resulting in the institution taking action to solve these issues? According to our survey, 76.7% of people said their report of racial discrimination did not result in the institution taking action to solve this. 20% of participants answered yes, leaving 3.3% of participants answering maybe. These results correspond with those on question 6. Question 6 results show that 42.2% of participants believe that universities are not actively trying to tackle racism. Our final question of our survey, question 10, is, what advice would you give to a fellow individual experiencing racism in the education system? What would you encourage others to do to help advocate these issues? Please explain. So the most common answers to this question was to speak up about the issue and report to a member of staff or head of department to get the issue resolved quickly.
There's also a lot of people saying to campaign more about this issue of racism. Some examples from the Immigrant Council online page are: Step 1, assess the safety of the situation and not to put yourself in danger. Step 2, take action and stay with the person affected. For example, stand beside the person affected during the abuse, focus on and talk to them. Do not engage with the abuser, film the abuse if you feel safe to do so. Step 3, show solidarity by staying with the person affected for as long as they need to. Listen to them and support them, and call a friend or family member. Step 4 is support the person affected to report the incident or report it yourself.
It is clear by our survey research and results that racism is still present today in the education system. There needs to be work done by universities to prevent this, for example, strengthening the anti-racism policy with no tolerance shown to students or lecturers. Students and lecturers need to be taught to report instances of racism and not to be a bystander in these situations where the victim could be too scared to speak up for themselves.